Hello, everyone. My name is Jeffrey Bauer. I'm the Senior Investment Officer working with the upstream team at IFC, which is part of the World Bank Group. And I'm very honored to be here to present to you some of the work we've been doing on leveraging data to be able to bring financial services to unattended segments across Latin America. Our team at IFC has been identifying a number of key opportunities to be able to bring financial services to many unattended groups all across Latin America and the Caribbean. Those groups include women. Those groups include micro-entrepreneurs, the LGBTI population, refugees, Afro-descendants, and indigenous populations, among others. The specific focus that we've done over the last years has been responding to the ongoing crisis that exists for the Venezuelan population and the migration effect that we have been following and supporting over the last period of time. Let's talk about in specific the report that we completed that highlighted the kinds of data we were able to identify and how we're bringing that information to financial institutions in order to translate into better service delivery for this important community. As we all know, there's been a significant crisis of migration from Venezuela, primarily occurring in the last 4 years. 6.8 Venezuelan migrants have left the country since this crisis began, which represents up to 15% of the entire population. Of those, 85% have stayed in Latin America, and 75% have remained in the 5 key countries in South America, primarily Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Brazil, and Chile. The majority of these have been trying to establish themselves, but have faced significant challenges in being able to establish themselves in the country due to limited access in terms of identification and access to basic financial services, which includes savings, lending, insurance products, among others. The work that we have done has identified a key number of stereotypes that exist in the communities in which we focus on that prevent the delivery of financial services to the Venezuelan migrants. And those stereotypes exist in the concept that these people are not here to stay, that they are in an unstable migratory status, that they are in perilous labor conditions, and that they do not necessarily qualify for the types of financial services that are being provided by the financial institutions that we work with. The reality, though, based on the data that we have identified as part of the study, is that Venezuelan migrants are here to stay. They have a relatively well-established and stable migratory situation. They have been working in jobs pretty consistently over the past at least 2 to 3 years, and they have a significant interest in being able to access financial services based upon their previous use of financial services in their home country. And so there exists a significant business case to be able to deliver financial services to these people as a result of this. We've done 2 key studies, one in Colombia, one in Peru. I'm going to talk first about the Colombia study and then about the Peru study. Again, as we mentioned, Colombia is a country where we've seen at least 2.5 million people coming in, primarily within the last 6 or 7 years. It's pretty gender balanced. Initially, the men came, but then they've brought along their families, and so the number of people in the country are well balanced from a gender perspective. And luckily, the government of Colombia has provided the opportunity for Venezuelan migrants to stay in the country by providing them a government-issued identity that gives them temporary resident status for 10 years. And so this is the situation that we are in. Of the 2.5 million that have come, 1.4 have received their government status, and 1.1 million are waiting for their confirmation of that status. They exist all over the country, but primarily in urban zones. They're primarily of productive age, the majority being from 18 to 50. And they are looking for an opportunity to reestablish themselves, utilizing financial services as a basis for this. When we talk about the kinds of people who have come to the country, the majority of them are already working. Primarily men have been able to find jobs, but a number of women have found jobs as well. The unemployment rate is very, very similar to the local population. The number of people who have at least some level of higher education is higher than that of the local population. So these are educated people who are coming to the country. And again, 90% have spent more than 2 years in the country. They've had at least a year and a half in their current place of residence. 71% of them have their family with them, so they have no draws pulling them back into Venezuela. They've actually brought their family along with them, and they've had 19 months of consistent work in their country, which has resulted in 96% of them saying they plan to stay in Colombia for a long period of time. Interestingly, 73% of this population did have access to financial services in Venezuela. That is higher than the Colombian population. Of the recent numbers that have come out from the World Bank Findex that were just updated this year, that amount has increased to 84%. So 84% of Venezuelans have had access to financial services, which is much higher than the Colombian population in general. But on the right side of the screen, you can see which of these people have been able to access financial services in the country. And the reality is even though half of them want bank accounts, only 14% have access. Even though there's a large demand and the majority of that is unattended. Specifically, when you look at formal credits, you can see 15% of the population that we interviewed had an interest in being able to access a loan, of which 0.5 of the population has had access up until this point. And so what we did is we took an analysis of all of the people in the country. We split them up into different segments. We identified what those segments were, what they represented, based upon their types of habits, their genders, their level of financial income, the age groups, and we were able to identify a number of key segments that we felt would be of key interest to the financial institutions, and we identified the potential of each of those financial institutions, and we key each of the segments for the financial institutions, and we brought them this information as a way of being able to draw them in to utilize the services. The story in Peru is very, very similar. We have 1.3 million migrants coming into Peru, of which, again, there's a little bit skewing towards male. A third of them have already got regularized status. Another 2/3 of them are with provisional status, and there's a number of them that are going through the process of regularization. So again, still a large number of the population in the country that's looking for this formal status. It's important to mention, even though the number of people in the country coming from Venezuela is smaller in terms of absolute numbers, the vast majority of these people have moved into Lima and in Callao, which means that if you go to Lima, now 1 in every 10 people living in Lima is Venezuelan. And so the city has significantly changed in terms of its character. And you now have 10% of the population that, again, is in a productive age, that is in the country, but primarily in Lima, in Peru's case, which even increases the opportunity for financial services because you only really have to focus in one major urban area to be able to deliver these services. Very similar story here as well. The majority of them are employed. The majority of them are of productive age, 31 years old. And the majority of them have been in the country for at least 2 years, have at least been working for a year, have their family with them, and have the intention of staying. So it's a very similar story in terms of the migrant population in the country. The access to data and credit and insurance products is still something that is quite surprising. Many of these people had access to all of these financial services during their time in Venezuela, and they're actively looking for these products to be able to serve their needs. However, the financial institutions because of the lack of data, because of the lack of understanding, have not been able to provide or have not been willing to provide services to this population. And again, it's not the financial inclusion in this case is not about teaching people how to use financial services. It's about simply finding ways to overcome the prejudices and the barriers to bring this entire important population into the financial services scheme. And you notice here that the demand for insurance is quite high, and that's cultural. That comes from the way in which the Venezuelan population has had access to public health, has had access to financial services, and saw the impact of the pandemic. That's significantly drawn their demand to insurance products, which in general in Colombia and in Peru are not really well desired by the population in general, which again further promotes the opportunity to provide financial services to this community. What do these people want to do? Well, they want financial services for savings, for lending, and for insurance, as I mentioned. But a key product that people are looking for is the ability to be able to send money home. We've heard stories that the majority of people who are from Venezuela are in Colombia and in Peru as a basis to be able to improve the livelihoods, not just of themselves, but of their family that remains in Venezuela. And so key to being able to understand how to serve this client base is an understanding of their needs and their habits. I've heard stories of people who send up to 60% of their income back to their family in Venezuela and are willing to forego luxuries and forego eating out, forego any of the other benefits of their work as a way of being able to support their families. And so any financial institution that wants to provide financial services to this population needs to understand what their client wants and what their client is looking for. Again, what we've done similarly to what we did in Peru is we identified what we did in Colombia, is we've identified in Peru a number of different segments based upon their habits, based upon their interest in being able to access financial services, their stability, as well as a number of other factors. And we use the data to be able to highlight the key types of personalities that we believed would be of most interest to financial institutions as a way of demystifying the concept that all Venezuelans are unemployed and don't present value. The reality is that there are some people who are in very precarious situations, but there are a lot of people who are already beginning their lives and are representing good opportunities for financial institutions to be able to provide financial services to this community. And so basically, what is the conclusion? What do we know about this population that exists inside of these 5 key countries? They are stable. They have a significant capacity to generate income, and that capacity comes with the fact that these people are educated. They have an understanding of financial services and have used it before and want to get back to the same socioeconomic level that they were at in their home country. Third, they have a preference for formality. These are people who are not looking to hide in the darkness. They want to be included, but can't as a result of challenges with their prejudices and identity validation. And again, they come to this with previous financial experience. You don't have to explain to these people what a savings account is. Many people that we spoke to as part of our survey had multiple credit cards, had mortgages, and were actually lending money to other people as part of their way of being able to generate income and participated in savings groups. So you have a highly sophisticated market segment that is simply not being attended as a result of the lack of data and the lack of information on the community, which is part of what we are trying to bring with this study. And so what is the potential that exists in the market for this community? The reality is that we could focus on 3 different phases. The phase of arrival is something that the UNHCR and the World Food Program and the International Organization of Migration focuses on. But once people have passed that initial phase of entering into the country, they're looking to establish themselves. And once they establish themselves, they find a home, they find their first job, then they want to move into integrating. They want to be able to build businesses. They want to be able to hire not just other Venezuelans, but they want to hire local people. They want to be able to build and move things into a point where where they have an opportunity to be able to build them up to a lifestyle that they can contribute. It's not just about taking for themselves. They want to contribute to the countries where they're able to focus on and support not just themselves, their families, but build businesses in the country. And so ultimately, what we really have to do is highlight the fact that there's issues from the demand side that exist from lack of information, self-exclusion, documentation. But on the offering side, there's also significant issues. Distrust and lack of being able to use credit history, lack of access. All of these informations that you can see on the screen are preventing financial institutions from being able to match the need that comes from the population itself. And so ultimately, when we've done this study, we've learned a lot, and we've identified the fact that financial institutions that want to be able to enter this have an opportunity to be able to do so. There's a significant opportunity to deliver financial services to this population. The population represents not only a significant need, but a significant potential in terms of growth. These are the stories we've heard when we spoke with local populations, is that the Venezuelan population has a reputation of being much more hardworking and much more, I don't want to say hardworking, that's the wrong term, much more entrepreneurial, and they have a greater culture of becoming salespeople, and are much more convincing at being able to get people to push people towards business models. And so financial institutions should take advantage of that difference. And the reality is that we have lots of opportunities to be able to deliver better financial services to this community by working through a number of different steps and being able to identify the fact that the barriers that exist within institutions are really what's preventing us from being able to serve this very important population in the country. And the data is really what's helping us. As I mentioned before, we've completed the study in Colombia and Peru. We're currently underway with a study in Ecuador on the population, and soon to be launching a similar study in Brazil, thanks to the help of the government of Japan to be able to complete this. And ultimately, we believe by identifying data that exists on an unknown population, sharing it with the institutions, and then utilizing that data as the basis for providing financial services is the way in which we as IFC can support the financial industry in being able to go much further and deliver financial services to key underserved segments. In this case, we're talking about the migrant population, but there are a number of other segments that we're also working on in terms of being able to deliver similar information. And we've taken that information and we've worked with specific institutions, Banca Mia, which is the largest microfinance organization in Colombia, Financiera Confianza, which is a large microfinance organization in Peru. And we work with them in being able to take the data that we have, teach them how to build key financial services that are relevant for the migrant population as a way of better serving this population and bringing them really the value that they need and access that they need to be able to rebuild their lives and contribute to reestablishing themselves and then building value for the countries that are in question. And ultimately, we do a number of work as well, where we worked with bankers associations and basically organizations that we help guide them in being able to understand how to better service the Venezuelan population from a community perspective. And we've also worked with the identity validators to be able to create connections between the government entities that issue the identity and the financial services that need that identity to be validated. We've financed the connections through the World Bank as a way of being able to assist in the validation of documents. And so we go from a study perspective, and that study turns into opportunities for investment as well as advisory work. And we also work on ecosystem plays that influence both the industry and the critical infrastructure necessary to resolve the challenges in being able to better service these communities in general. And so that's what we are doing in this space. We're also focusing, as I mentioned, on other underserved segments. But this really has been a key focus for IFC to be able to understand what role we can play in utilizing data to be able to better serve underserved populations, both in Latin America and globally all around the world. And so thank you very much. I look forward to answering any questions you might have. And again, thank you very much to the organizers for organizing this event and for having me participate.